Hey everybody, Scott Wikle. You're listening to My Kind of Country right here on Fish Creek Radio. The sounds of Merle Haggard's Strangers evolved as the years went by. For a period of time, several members of Bob Will's Texas Playboys toured with the band, and also the Dixieland Express. Merle also had two exceptional horn players in his group for many years. Of course, the great Don Markham on saxophone, and our special guest tonight playing trumpet and trombone. Please welcome Gary Church to My Kind of Country. Gary, how you doing?
Doing good. My kind of country, too.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for taking time.
You betcha.
Well, I think we were all sorry to hear about the passing of the great Merle Haggard, and I know you worked with him for many years, and I think it kind of came as a shock to everybody.
Yeah, it did. That hit me extremely hard.
Well, Gary, how many years did you work with Merle?
Well, let's see. I started kind of intermittently in 1978, and then from 82 to 92, I was there all the time.
Wow. Well, you come from more of a jazz background. How in the world did you end up playing with Merle Haggard?
Well, we had a little afternoon Dixieland job in Reno, Nevada at the El Dorado Hotel. And it was right across the street from Harrah's, where Merle played several times every year. And it started off with the guys in the band coming over and sitting in and jamming with us. And then eventually he'd come over and start singing and playing with us too. And it was fun.
I'll be darned. So, give me a little insight of what it was like to be a touring stranger. Tell me some good road stories.
Well, it was an honor, just of course, to be with Merle, because he was such an incredible singer and writer, and most people don't realize that he was a fine musician too, and the guys in the band were just, guys that you'd kind of grown up with as your heroes. The band was an absolute who's who of country music and Western swing music. And it was just an honor.
Well, you worked obviously very closely with Don Markham.
Yes, Don's a special talent.
He certainly is. Was it difficult playing those songs in some of the keys that Merle played them in?
Well, no, not for me. Most horn players have trouble with that, but that would be formally trained players, which I wasn't. I learned to play my horn playing along with records. And our record player spun a little bit fast, so I learned all those jazz songs that I started playing in sharp keys instead of the flat keys because the record player didn't turn the right speed. Which prepared me pretty good for a later career.
I guess so. That's funny. Well, what kind of stuff were you listening to growing up, Gary? Who were some of your influences?
Well, of course, almost no jazz musician could grow up without listening to and being influenced by Louis Armstrong. And then there was a band from New York, a man named Eddie Condon, who had a wonderful traditional swinging Dixieland band, and all his band, those guys were all my heroes.
Now, what all instruments do you play, Gary?
Well, I play the trumpet and the cornet and the trombone and some guitar and some piano and a little bit of bass, but I'd never call myself a bass player.
Well, I think you got the horns pretty well covered, so you don't need to worry about bass.
Yeah, except I never really could get a good handle on playing a reed instrument like Don did, Don ended up being such a good saxophone player.
Yeah, it's interesting. He played saxophone and trumpet too, so he was switching back and forth sometimes within the same song. I always thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and he was very good at that. That's difficult, and I did it with trombone and trumpet, switching back and forth, and it's a lot more difficult than you'd think of. I mean, of course, anytime you switch over. I mean, I've known guitar players that doubled on banjo or mandolin, and they pick it up and didn't have any trouble, and it's an entirely different thing to deal with.
Hmm. Well, Merle was very widely known for never using a set list, and you kind of never knew what he was going to do. How was it difficult sometimes to anticipate what he was going to do and have the right instrument ready?
No, because most of the time there was very very few things where the full band was playing before Merle sang, and in that case there'd be time to make the right choice, and we generally had a pretty good clue of what the first song was going to be, and then the last song. That was about it.
It was anybody's guess in between.
Exactly.
Well, I saw Merle several times. Do a show, more than one show in a day, and he'd come out and maybe do three songs that were the same song in both shows, and the rest would all be different.
Yeah. Well, he had so many to pick from. Some. Most artists get up there and they have their 6 or 7, if they were lucky, 6 or 7 big songs, and then they have to fill in. And Merle's problem is he could get up there and do an hour show of songs, and he's going to leave somebody's favorite one out because there were so many to pick from.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Well, he was good at reading the crowd. He could kind of get the mood of the crowd, and he seemed to adjust his set. If it was a more rowdy crowd, he'd do some of the more up-tempo stuff, and it was a subdued crowd, he'd do more of the slower stuff, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he really had, like I say, he had so much material to work with that he could go any direction.
Absolutely. Well, what was it like traveling on the road and all the hours on the bus and everything? Did you guys get kind of stir crazy in there?
Yeah, stir crazy would be a good way to describe it. I always thought it would make a wonderful situation comedy. Just a band, and the only set you'd need is the interior of a bus. There were some really funny things that went on, and things that seemed so strange. But that was our home.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what's one thing that kind of sticks out in your mind that was kind of a funny story?
Well, one thing that sticks out in my mind is I was in the top bunk, and I had to make a little jump to be able to get down to the floor if I had to go to the restroom. And it was middle of the night. I figured everybody was asleep, and I jumped down, and I landed right on Roy Nichols' back. And he had tumbled out of his bottom bunk and had a target set up in the back of the bus and was practicing shooting his BB gun.
Right on the bus.
Yeah. And I'm glad I didn't break his back.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's just something you didn't normally see.
No, that's the first time I've ever heard something like that. That's interesting. Well, I guess you got to do what you got to do to pass the time, right?
You betcha.
We had
a lot of fun.
Who are some of the favorite musicians that you got to work with? I know. Well, I think the band was fairly stable when the years you were there.
Well, actually, there was a lot of turnover from. I mean, some of my favorites weren't there as long as I would have liked them to be. Mm-hmm. But Tiny Moore and Roy Nichols and Jim Belkin was there most all the time I was there. And I love loved every one of them. They're all family, and they're all incredible musicians.
Do you guys stay in touch?
Not as much as we should. I still stay in touch every now and then with Mark Urey, the piano player, because we both live in Arizona.
Oh, okay.
We're about 150 miles apart, but he lives down the south part, down close to Tucson, and I'm up in the Phoenix area.
Mark's a good guy. I had him on the show a while back. And Clint Strong. I bet you had a lot of fun with him. He's more of a jazz player.
Oh yeah, and it was fun having a jazz mind on the band for me to somebody I could get up and we could talk all night about people maybe other people on the bus had never heard of, and it was just so nice to sit back and have somebody that we both appreciated the same music.
And he
was such an incredible player.
Did you guys ever jam on the bus as you were going down the road, or did you stop somewhere that when you had time off to go jam with somebody? Or
well, we would every chance we had, we'd play some. For a while, we had a little thing set up in the back room of the bus where we could sit around and play. Mark had his keyboard set up, and he had a little multi-track recorder. And sometimes Clint and myself and Don and Bobby Wayne and Jim Belkin and Mark, we'd get back there and just play the night away.
That's cool. That's pretty cool.
That's cool, except for the guys that were in the bunks right there.
Trying to sleep, yeah.
That were trying to sleep.
Or if Roy decided...
Especially the relief driver.
Yeah, or if Roy decided to start shooting BB targets, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh man,
that's too funny.
No, we had a wonderful time.
Now, did the whole band ride on the same bus, or did some of them ride up with Merle's bus?
Well, some of them were on Merle's bus. Biff always rode over on Merle's bus because he was. Along with Dean Holloway, the driver, he was the relief driver and the one that Merle had the most confidence in. And so Biff always rode over there on Merle's bus. And sometimes Don Markham rode over there because he helped drive too. But on our bus, Norm was always there. I was there. Biff, Jimmy, Leslie. It was. If I had to thank any one thing, I'd want to thank Merle Haggard for. It was for all the wonderful people he allowed for me to meet, to be part of my life for so long. That were incredible people, talented people, and I love them all like family.
That's good to hear. And Merle had some of the greatest people, as you mentioned, and they were always very nice to me over the years. I got to meet so many of the different strangers, including yourself, and and you guys obviously don't, that you won't remember those kind of people because my gosh, you see them, so many different people, but you always, made me always seem to feel welcome, and I always appreciated that,
Well, heck, it doesn't matter what you do or where you are, you always remember nice people.
Well, speaking of nice people, tell me about Miss Bonnie Owens.
Oh, the nicest. One of the biggest sweethearts I've ever known. And to be able to put up with the mess and stench of riding on a bus with 9 musicians, that's amazing. And never feeling uncomfortable or never making anybody else feel uncomfortable. It's just everybody was themselves, and she was a special lady.
Absolutely, she certainly was. Gary, when was the first recording session that you did with Merle? Do you remember that?
The first one I do, it was up in Reno, Nevada, and I was working with a fellow named Freddie Powers, and Freddie's band was in recording, and Merle and Biff and Don Markham, along with Belkin and Tiny Moore, came and joined us in the studio, and we did a bunch of Western swing things, and it was really cool.
I remember seeing an Austin City Limits concert. It was Merle and Wikle, and everybody was just kind of sitting down, and it was kind of a big jam. And I knew you were playing on that, and Dean Reynolds, and just a bunch of different Spud Goodall, just a bunch of great musicians playing up there. That was a cool jam.
Yeah, that was a magic weekend.
Now those Austin City Limits shows. Of course, they recorded those to be broadcast, and it seemed to me like there was probably an awful lot more that was played that never got broadcast.
I think so. I think they chopped it up into several, and they showed them at different times, but I don't think I've ever seen everything we did.
Mm-hmm. There was good stuff, though.
That was really, that was a very special weekend.
You are listed on, speaking of Freddie Powers, one of Merle's greatest songs, in my opinion, was I Always Get Lucky With You, which actually became a big hit for George Jones, and you're listed as a co-writer on that song.
Yes. Freddie and I were working up in Reno, and we both had a bunch of songs that we'd both written, and we kind of pulled them together, and through Freddie had a connection with Merle, and he got the song to Merle. Merle liked it and recorded it, and then George heard it and loved it, and he recorded it too.
Classic song.
That's pretty lucky to have the first song somebody picks up that you write be performed by two guys like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's those guys could have sat there and read a funny book into a microphone and made a hit record out of it.
That's right. Amen to that. Well, your distinctive sound is on so many of Merle's records, especially during the mid-late 80s. Twinkle, Twinkle, Lucky Star, you had a great solo in that. And, of course, Chill Factor. And and you were on the Unforgettable album too. That was in a little bit later on in the 2000s.
Yeah,
was that
some of it was recorded in the 90s?
Okay, I was going to ask about that. If that was something, maybe he had some older songs that that he released.
Yeah, somebody we did a lot of those old standards, and it was right before I left the band, before we moved to Branson.
Oh, okay.
And basically, when Merle went to Branson, then when he left, I stayed there and went to work for Miltilla.
Oh, okay.
And I like the idea of going to work the same place every day and not having to have a 500-mile bus ride in between. And I was lucky that I got to work with both those guys.
Wow. How long did you work for Mel?
It was about 11 years. And, he's in need of some prayers for healing now, too.
Yeah, I understand he's having some pretty serious health issues.
Absolutely. And so if there's anybody who wants to get a prayer chain for Mel, they should do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because we've lost too many.
We certainly have. We've lost a lot just this year. It's they were starting to call me the Grim Reaper of Fish Creek Radio there for a while because we lost. I interviewed Jim Ed Brown and then he passed away, and then I interviewed Tommy Overstreet and he passed away, and then of course Merle and Red Simpson. I actually interviewed Red on the day that he died, about 5 hours before he passed away.
Oh, so man.
We're losing.
Well, let me give you a list of people I want you to talk to.
I was going to say, maybe I should put a warning at the beginning of my interviews, Gary.
Oh, that's okay.
Well,
Heck, I've been trying to figure this dying out for years, and I can't get it right.
well, I'm glad. Well, tell me what you're doing these days.
Well, I'm in two different bands. I've been blessed with this incredible sweetheart who has been my sweetheart, my nurse, and my jamming buddy. She's an incredible stride jazz piano player and a hustler. She really works very hard to keep the traditional music alive here in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And I'm in several different bands with her. One is called the 52nd Street Jazz Band, and that's led by a marvelous clarinetist named Joe Hopkins from Fort Worth, Texas. And we work many jazz festivals, and we do a history of early jazz presentations at schools.
Oh, wow.
And it's fun doing that for the young kids.
Oh, absolutely. And it's nice.
And they get up there and do the Charleston and the Jitterbug and all that stuff. It's really cool.
Oh, that's cool. And it's really nice that you guys share that together, too. That's really cool.
Exactly. And then Cheryl has us busy. We're usually 4 or 5 nights a week all through the winter season here in Arizona. And when it starts getting hot and the people go back to Michigan, then we that's our time to rest for the summer.
Yeah, well, kind of the opposite for us.
Yeah, exactly.
We descend on you in the winter
friends
time.
from Michigan. We have friends in Michigan, a band called Wally's Warehouse Waifs, and we work with them quite often a year at jazz festivals, and I can't remember the town that they're from, but they're based out of Michigan.
Oh, that's great.
And we do. Matter of fact, I worked there a long time ago. There was a tremendous jazz cornet player in Detroit named Tom Saunders, and he was one of the best in the country.
Wow.
And he was a Detroit native,
A lot of
worked
great
all around
musicians.
Detroit.
Yeah, a lot of great musicians out of Detroit.
You betcha.
Absolutely. Well, Gary, I'm
And Cheryl has this one neat thing that we have going on. This is our second year. We work New Year's cruises. And it's like a little floating Dixieland Jazz Festival at sea. And Cheryl and I host a daily jam session on the boat.
Oh, wow. Is that right there in Phoenix?
And well, no. No ports here. Last year we left out of Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, okay.
This year it leaves New Year's Eve from San Diego. It goes down to the Mexican Riviera.
Oh, okay. So this is a big cruise ship then.
It is, yes.
Okay. Oh, cool.
On the Holland America lines. And the company is called Jazz Doggin. Jazzd. My glasses are failing me.
Jazz Doggin.
Dagan.
There you go.
And it's a hoot. We just had a ball last year.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it's just like a floating music festival, and we do the jam sessions in the mornings, and it's Cheryl and I host it, and then guys from the other bands come, or just people that are on board ship that like to play, and we play mostly New Orleans jazz or Dixieland jazz or some Western swing. We just kind of we have a lot of fun, and it's a chance to meet other musicians, and then we're on the boat with there's 2 or 3 other bands, and one of them is our friends there from Michigan.
Oh, wow.
And their names that's Wally's Warehouse Waifs.
I'll be darned. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
And,
Michigan folks, if you're looking for something to do next winter, that sounds like a grand time. Get involved in that. And
You betcha.
getting some warmer weather too.
Oh yeah, but it's nice. It's something to look forward to every year, and it's funny. It doesn't matter. Most of my work is in the jazz idiom, and I don't think Merle ever had any idea how much respect he had within that group of people.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Because they could recognize him integrating that into his music.
Oh, most definitely. Well, he did the Dixieland album, back in '73 with the Dixieland Express, and a lot of his stuff, especially in the '80s when you were recording with him, I called it country jazz, because he had Clint Strong, he had yourself, and he was doing a lot of stuff that was kind of almost a crossover, especially when you're talking the Chill Factor album and Friend in California. There was a lot of crossover there, and that's one thing I always loved about Haggard's music. He turned me on to a lot of different kinds of music through what he was doing.
Absolutely.
And you were a big part of that too.
The reason I started listening to country music was because of hearing Don and a guy named Gene Boland, who used to play clarinet with him years ago, and hearing them on some records.
Oh, sure. No, he was on that.
I like that.
He was on that I Love Dixie Blues album.
Yes.
Yep, he was part of the Dixieland Express. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I remember him from back in the early 60s being with a group called the Dukes of Dixieland, who were one of the most famous bands of that kind of music in the late 20th century.
Absolutely.
And the fathers of stereo recording, and Cheryl Thurston, my sweetheart that plays piano, she's played with the Dukes of Dixieland.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Everything just kind of goes full circle.
Yep, that it does. And music's, you said it earlier, one of the nicest things with the music is all the wonderful people you meet and get to work with, and I think that's one of the best memories you can have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's I'll never be void of a family, because that is my family.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, Gary, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and I want to thank you so much for taking time to be here and share some of your great memories. And I want to thank you for the wonderful music you've given us over all these years too.
Oh well, thank you so much. And I can't think of a sadder reason to have it happen, but thank you for calling.
Well, this is something I meant to do for a long time, and I had actually talked to Merle about it, and when it does, one thing happened or another thing happened, just didn't get around to it, and then after he passed away, I decided I'd make this priority one, so I'm real happy to be able to talk to you guys.
And if after this interview I pass away, I'll give you my cremation bill.
Don't haunt me, okay?
Because my cremation is going to be a hoot.
Yeah, especially if I'm footing the bill. I see how it is. Okay.
Yeah, because the day before I die, I'm eating 2 bags of uncooked popcorn. And my cremation will be something you'll want to see.
I would suppose so. You're going to go out with a bang, for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you, Scott.
All right, Gary, it was a pleasure talking with you. We're going to play one of Merle's great songs, and you're going to hear Gary Church do a great solo in here. Here's Twinkle, Twinkle, Lucky Star as we continue with My Kind of Country here on Fish Creek Radio.